Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore is out in theaters, the third part of one of the most mishandled movie franchises in recent memory. Directed once again by David Yates, starring Eddie Redmayne, Jude Law, Ezra Miller, Dan Fogler and Mads Mikkelsen, who replaces Johnny Depp. Warner Brothers decided that the controversy surrounding the abuse allegations between Depp and his girlfriend Amber Heard were not in line with the kid-friendly brand of Harry Potter, even though from what we've seen in the media, it was pretty clear that Amber Heard was the more abusive one, and she still gets to be an Aquaman too for some reason. Anyway though, the film is the third installment in the Fantastic Beasts series, which is kind of a spin-off / prequel series set in the world of Harry Potter. The first film, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, I actually really enjoyed that one. I thought it was a nice change of pace from the world-ending Voldemort scenarios to an awkward but sweet guy running around 1930s New York in search of magical creatures. The second one, Crimes of Grindelwald, began focusing more on the evil wizard and the young, or rather middle-aged Dumbledore. And the script written by J.K. Rowling herself was one of the most bizarrely confusing things ever. It introduced a number of seemingly random characters, tried to cram in all of their interconnected backstories into a single film and make us care about 75 different plot lines, and failed miserably. I thought it was a downright terrible movie. I forgot half the things it mentioned right after walking out of the theater, and I couldn't bring myself to even care about the other half. The only thing it successfully did was ruin some of the existing characters and dynamics from the first film, like making Queenie join the dark side at the end for some reason. And yet, for some reason, it still has a score of 6.5 on Imdb, so I suppose Harry Potter fans nowadays will just consume any content that they are given, no matter the quality. Myself, I didn't approach the third film with much hope. The reviews beforehand mentioned that the movie was better than its predecessor and that Mads Mikkelsen did a better job than Johnny Depp. But after seeing it myself, I have to say that while these things are technically true, they don't prevent the film from still being a boring mess. The story picks up sometime after the events of the second movie. Grindelwald and Dumbledore each come in possession of a rare magical creature that can judge people's characters and predict the future, I guess. Grindelwald is trying to use it to gain power in the magical community, and Dumbledore to stop his former lover. But because Grindelwald has these visions of the future and can protect himself quite well, Dumbledore decides to send an Avengers-style team of people, half of whom we haven't even met before, to realize a very specific plan. Problem is, we as the audience don't know what the plan is, because nobody explains it. And the characters themselves don't know what the plan is, because to keep it secret, each of them only knows a tiny task that they have to do, but nobody, except for Dumbledore, doesn't have the full picture. So, the first half of the film is just downright confusing. We don't know why anybody is doing the things that they are doing. They themselves are confused as hell by them. We don't really know what are the exact stakes, and where the movie is heading, and how invested we should be emotionally. The politics of the wizarding world, we don't know what are the implications of this character doing this and this one winning this election and so on. In terms of writing, it's just horrible. There's no excuse for coming up with a film that's so convoluted that it hides half the plot from even its audience, especially when it finally reaches the end. And I thought to myself, this kind of felt like episode 8 of a 12-episode season of television. We kind of know what the world is already, so there's little wonder left of discovering new things. But it's too early yet for climax or the conclusion, as the story has to stumble through several more beats on the way there. And so it all feels rather pointless, especially when you look at two plot lines which were very unpopular with the fans in the second film. The first one is the Credence story, which was just silly, let's face it. And yet we spent like half of the previous movie building it up. And the second one is, of course, what they've done to Jacob and Queenie in the end, having them go separate ways. The Secrets of Dumbledore is kind of reversing course on both of those, but it does so in a very clunky and weird way, because on the one hand, we spend the entire movie before both of those plot lines are finally resolved once and for all, but on the other, if you think about it, there's not that much that happens with them during all that time. Credence just decides to do something at the end, after one rather unconvincing conversation with Dumbledore. Same for Queenie. She makes a decision even though there really wasn't anything that would clearly push her towards that decision. Instead, we spend a lot of time on elaborate sets with people chasing each other and doing magic, which looks exactly the same as always. But I have to admit, I found myself struggling to care. Half the characters in the film feel like they were just introduced. I don't know anything about them, so why should I be invested in them? The only ones I did enjoy still were Newt and Jacob, the characters which go all the way back to the first film. Tina, who I always thought was the heart of the film, played by Catherine Waterston, is unfortunately absent, except for just a tiny cameo at the end. Apparently COVID and scheduling conflicts prevented her from playing a larger role, and her absence is really felt. And even Newt feels like a side character in his own movie now. I remember, and you know, the thing about it being his own movie, I remember seeing the title card at the beginning, and the words Fantastic Beasts are just written kind of to the side and in this tiny font, and instead Secrets of Dumbledore is shown in these huge letters in the middle of the screen. It's very clear that the filmmakers are more interested in exploring Dumbledore's story, but for some weird reason they refuse to let go of the Fantastic Beasts angle. And it boggles my mind, because I think you could easily have had two separate franchises, and each of them would print money if you did it right. One series of films with Newt going around the world, having wacky, low-stakes adventures related to monsters, and exploring different wizarding cultures, like New York in the first film. And the second series being strictly about the Wizard War and Dumbledore. As it is, they really try their hardest to cram all these things into one film. They try to combine this small story about an awkward animal keeper and a grander plot about Wizard Hitler, and it just doesn't work at all, even tonally speaking. Which is even evident in the way that the actual Fantastic Beasts now are reduced to basically one set piece in prison, which is rather inconsequential to the grander scheme. And the whole, like, seeing the future and judging people's character plot device, that's technically also a magical beast, but in this case, it literally could have been anything else. It could have been a magical object, it could have been a human with some powers, it could have been anything. Anyway though, the film, as I said in the beginning, it's technically better than Crimes of Grindelwald, but that's only because the bar has been set so incredibly low. So this film is still bad, but not as bad as that one. Jude Law and Mads Mikkelsen are indeed doing a decent job with the material that they are given, but the movie as a whole is just only slightly better than the previous one, which in my book means it's still pretty damn awful. Convoluted plot, random characters, terrible writing in terms of explaining to the audience what exactly is going on and why, wasting time on plot lines that end up being completely pointless, grey and boring cinematography, and worst of all, the whole thing is just completely boring. If you haven't given up on the franchise yet, I think this might be a good time. You'll save yourself 2 hours and 20 minutes of pure exhaustion.